So it is an absolute pleasure to have so many of you in schools all over the UK along today for the Voices of Nature live lesson. I am kind of just chattering away throughout it, but Amy is our ambassador, and I'm going to introduce you to her a little bit more in a moment, and she is the real expert in terms of using your voice for nature, to support nature and to speak up for nature. It is a pleasure to have so many of you along in your schools all over the UK who are a force for nature. So every day in your schools, every week, you are doing amazing activities to support nature. And sometimes it probably feels like you're doing it on your own in your school and without realising how many there are all across the UK that are doing things like you. And when you all do these actions, activities, individually in your schools, but they're happening in many other schools, they really add up and they really make a difference. And they really help to create that healthier, tree-filled future for all. So thank you so much for everything that you're doing to be a force for nature, not just in your schools, because many of you take that outside your schools and you kind of stand up for nature and speak up for nature in your communities, with your families. You just celebrate how amazing it is and how important it is. So thank you so much for doing that. Today we're going to be discussing the secret power of being an ambassador. Now, some of you in your schools will be Young Tree Champions School Ambassador, and some of you might not be, but that is something that we are at the minute open for nominations for. So all of our Young Tree Champion schools could nominate pupils to be Young Tree Champion Ambassadors. And if you do that, you'll have the option not just to do this live lesson, but to do live masterclasses with our other ambassadors as well as Amy. So we're going to discover a secret power that is shared by our ambassadors. And we're also going to look at how we structure and share moments have an impact. So people listen to our voices and what we're saying about nature. One thing I do just want to mention as well before we get started is that we currently have a competition running, and that competition is called Speaking Up for Trees and Nature. And it seems to fit really well with this Voice of Nature because it's about people sharing sharing speeches, sharing their voice of nature, sharing their thoughts and feelings and passions about nature using a video. So filming a short video of you saying something about why you're so passionate about nature. And we're in the 4th year of this national competition now, and you could win a Go Ape voucher, you could win a certificate, a medal, you could come along to a festival and perform nationally in front of people all over the country. And the deadline for that competition is the end of this month. So you may find that you're inspired today to write something and to say something that could be entered into this competition. That website's on there, and I will share that with all of the teachers who have logged in today. So that you can enter your young people for this competition if that's something that you're interested in doing. Just quickly check before we go any further that there's no one in the waiting room that I need to admit. Yes, there is. Good timing. So without further ado, I am going to introduce you to Amy, who is one of our Young Tree Champion ambassadors. She's been a Young Tree Champion ambassador for a number of years now. And she's just going to start off by telling you a little bit about what she does and how she's got this passion for nature and why she's a Young Tree Champions ambassador. So I will hand over to Amy now.
Thanks, Katie, and welcome everyone. It's great to see you all here learning about how to use your voice for nature. So for me, that journey started quite a long time ago. I have always loved nature and especially our ocean. Hands up if you love our ocean. Great, amazing to see. Cool. So that has always been my passion. I am so fascinated by all the marine animals that live in our ocean. Everything from dolphins and turtles to fish and sea slugs and seahorses. And from a young age, I was really lucky to spend a lot of time in nature, swimming in the sea or climbing mountains or walking in forests. And that's another thing that I've had a really strong connection to is trees and forests, because when I'm walking in a wood, I feel so peaceful, and it has such a power to help me feel relaxed and to improve my mood and my health as well. And so I was so excited when the opportunity came along a few years ago now to join the Tree Council as an ambassador. So for the last 5 or 6 years now, I've been using my voice to help the Tree Council to speak to so many young people across the UK about what you can do to be a force for nature and to use your incredible superpowers to speak up on behalf of trees and to protect wildlife all across the UK. So I also run my own charity. We help young people to take climate action in schools all across the UK to try and make a difference in the world we live in. And I've planted 30,000 trees as well with my community up in Cumbria, right in the north of England. So that's just a little bit about me, but I'll be telling you a bit more later on.
Thank you so much, Amy. And it's really amazing and inspiring to hear how young people like Amy with a passion for nature can use that to do so much good. And I know many of you have got amazing passions for nature. And hearing a little bit about what Amy's done with that shows not only what you could go on to do, Amy starting her own charity, but also the power of a person, the amount of difference that charity has made because Amy had that passion to found it. So just giving you some ideas of where you could take your passion as well. So today we're looking at, we said 2 things, and the first thing that we were going to look at is the secret power of being an ambassador. So there is something that all of our ambassadors have in common, a superpower that we call it. And that superpower is something that they all share. Some of our ambassadors, like Amy, have set up charities, some musicians, others sports people, bakers. We have all different sorts of people with a passion for nature who are ambassadors for the Young Tree Champions. But they all share one thing in common, and that is a connection to nature. That is a secret power that all of our ambassadors have. And Amy's talked a little bit about her love for nature, but Amy, can you tell me why you think having that connection with nature is a secret power and so important for an ambassador?
Yeah, sure. So I think we have to love something to protect it. And no one, if we didn't love trees and have a connection to trees, then we wouldn't care if people chop them down, or if no one cared for the trees that we have or planted new trees. So I think it's so important that we foster this connection to nature by spending time in the outdoors. So if you have a school playground, maybe, then making sure you can make that as green as possible, planting trees, planting vegetables that you can eat, or planting wildflowers. So even just getting hands-on and getting your hands in the soil or touching the leaves of a tree and actually connecting to such a beautiful living being that might not look like us, but is still just as alive, then that can help us to care for it just as we would any other friend. If our friend was in trouble, we have a connection to that person, so we would want to help them out. And it's just the same for trees and for nature. If we love it, if we connect to it, then we have that sense of connection, which can help us to protect it and to speak out on behalf of trees and nature.
Fabulous. I think it was so clearly, and what I would think it would be a great opportunity now, because you've all sat down, settled down and listened so clearly up until this point. It might be a great time in the chat for you guys to let us know what you love about nature. So Amy talked about there, if you have that love for it, then you want to help it, you want to stand up for it, and you want to help other people connect to it. What do you guys love about nature? Amy talked about her love for the ocean, her love for trees and forests. Is there anything in particular you feel a real connection with? Anything in particular you love? Let your teacher know, and we can add in the chat what school you're from and what it is that you love about nature, what any particular areas of nature that you feel really connected to, that you love to spend time in or time with. That would be fantastic. I see Rosebrook was having some trouble with sound, and we did have some waves before, so I'm assuming that everyone else is managing with that. If you do have difficulty with technical, oh, we've got answers from Rosebrook already. Fantastic. Making homes for nature, that's a fantastic response. It shows that connection. Not only are you observing and you're enjoying it for yourself, but you're wanting to make it even better for nature itself. Loving trees because of the oxygen they give. That's absolutely fantastic. And that shows some amazing knowledge there. Well done. The forests, similar to Amy there, loving that connection with forests. Well done. That's certainly something that I share. Fantastic. So we can see already you've got some of those connections. You've got that secret power that all of our ambassadors share, and then it looks like you guys all share too. And that's something that when you share that passion with others, it helps them appreciate it as well. So one of the other things that we said we'd look at not only is about that secret power, but it's also about how we share that with others, that they really listen, they really pay attention, and they really get to hear about things you love about nature. I can see all sorts going on in the chat there as well. Bees, animals, planting trees. Oh, we've got a lovely one here. Love for flowers, the relaxing breeze, nature in general. That's amazing. Like, there's nothing we don't love about it. That's fab. Okay, but what you're going to think about now is how you share that information, how you share that passion and that love that you have, so it sticks with people. And we need to think about 3 things. I'm going to see if you can remember these later on. 3 things. First one is the content. So that's what you're saying. The first thing is when we're going to say things to people, if we're going to write a speech, if we're going to share a message, what are we going to put in that message? What is the content going to be? Next is how are we going to say it? How do we deliver that message? And how do we structure it? How do we order it so it really sticks in their mind? And they're the 3 things that we're going to look at. And the first thing, I'm just going to pause a minute because I am going to see if any of you remember these 3 things in a minute. Content, what you're saying, the delivery, how you're saying it, and the structure, how you put that together, what order you put that in. Okay, I can see some people who look like they are paying attention. I'm going to see how your memories work and test them in a bit. Okay, so first we're going to look at the content. We're going to look at what we say. And what we want is to say kind of things that people are going to want to listen to. But Amy, do you think it's important if we talk about it from a personal point of view, or if we give lots of kind of factual information, statistics? What kind of content do you think works effectively?
Good question. So I think that it's so important to show your personal connection and passion for nature, because that's really going to be what makes people to listen to you and to your story. So we're going to talk in a bit about a moment that you have with nature and exploring that connection. And I think delving into that as content is going to be so special to help people be inspired by you. It can also be really useful to bring in some facts and some statistics, some things that you've learned about why trees are important, or how many trees we have, or how many animals live in trees, that kind of thing, because that can back up your argument and your story. But making sure that you always link it back to why it matters to you, and then that will help it to matter to other people as well.
Absolutely. So that idea of starting with something personal that is specific to you and then linking it into facts is a fantastic way, because if we just talked about facts, then that's information other people might know. But if we talk about it from our point of view and make it personal, then it's something they'll have never heard before. And so we suggest that you think about a moment. That is a time in nature, a time when something important happened. Now, we have moments in our life, whether you're 8 years old or 80 years old, there will be moments that stick with you, that are important, that you don't forget about. And many of those will happen in nature, and they will stick with us because they deepen our connection to nature. And you will have these important memories, and they will sometimes make you feel an emotion. So when you think about these moments, it might be because there was something really funny that you can't forget. It might be something that made you feel a little bit scared or even a little bit sad. But they're things that stick with you. And the reason that they stick with you is because they're important. Now, like I said, many of these moments will have happened in nature and around nature. And they don't have to be the big dramatic moments in life. They can be just little things that when you remember, it brings a smile to your face. It might have been in a moment in a forest. It might have been when you visited a beach, a local park, or it might be your garden or the school grounds. You might have moments that are to do with you and your class going outside and planting trees, or having forest schools, or doing a campfire, or anything. It might be a break time at school, but it's a moment that's stuck with you that you don't forget, and that makes you feel something inside because it's something that's important. And that could change you as a person. And if you share those moments with others, it could also affect them as well. So what I would like you to do now is just have a think about a moment you might have in nature that you'd be willing to share. So that's something that was important, that stuck with you, that even though it might have happened in the past, it might have happened 6 months ago, it might have happened last year, you still remember it because it's important to you. So I'm not going to go into detail about mine, but I remember a moment climbing a tree when I was younger. We used to have a climbing tree that was near our house. And I climbed a little bit higher than normal. And it was a little bit of a scary experience for me, but I remember that quite clearly. I remember getting lost in the woods. And I also remember planting a hedgerow with my dad in a local school near to me. So these are moments that stick with me. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to fill up, which will be nice for you all, for about 30 seconds to a minute. And I just want you on your own in your classrooms to think about moments that stick with you when you've been in nature. You might have been doing something, an activity, you might have been with friends, family, you might be at school, but something that's stuck with you and been important to you. So I want you to start to think about that now on your own. You don't need to talk to anybody else. But can you think of a moment or a memory in nature that you think stands out to you, that's been important, that you don't forget? I'm going to give you about 30 seconds. And I'm going to be quiet for a bit just so you can really focus and have a think. So this could be a time that you felt happy, or it might have made you feel calm or proud. Okay, so I'm hoping that some of you have thought of a moment, some of you might have thought of 5 moments, and you're going to have to pick one. Now I'd like you to share that with somebody next to you. So I'd like you to tell somebody next to you what your moment was, and listen to what their moment was as well. You can see some of those conversations going on. Fabulous. Okay, so it looks like lots of you have already thought of moments because you look like you're sharing them in your classrooms, and that's fantastic to see. So the next thing is to share them with us. So if any of you would like to tell your teacher, and they can type it in the chat. If any of you would like to say something and your teacher wants to unmute the microphone, then you are welcome to do that. If anyone does want to do that, if you kind of come closer to the camera and we can see you there, then you're welcome to, or it can be typed in the chat. I will do my best to look at the chat and pay attention to the cameras at the same time. Multitasking is not my strongest point. Oh, it looks like we might have somebody there. Anybody want to share a moment that sticks with them? I think you should be able to unmute if you do want to. We've got one in the chat. Rescuing a hedgehog. That sounds like an amazing moment, and will have had a fantastic impact for that little hedgehog. Jumping in the nettle bushes, itchy, but still wanted to do it more. I love that. I remember actually my friend falling in the nettles. Going for a walk and a horse came up to you. I wonder how you felt on that one. Whether you felt brave and excited or slightly nervous. Went to a place where there were illuminations on the trees. That sounds like something I would love to go and see. You saw a squirrel in the bin outside your classroom. That sounds like you've got plenty to keep me distracted. Bug hunting. Oh, that sounds like an amazing thing to do. Planting flowers when I was 6. You see how that stuck with you? That shows that it was an important moment. Or a grass snake in a nature reserve. Wow, someone's been snowmobiling in Finland. That seems like the kind of exciting thing Amy would get up to, actually. Exploring other parts of the world and doing exciting things. Wow. It sounds like you guys have got some amazing moments that you are sharing. So thank you for that. I will keep checking in. So you've got Grandad pushing me on a swing attached to a tree. I love that. And I think sometimes the moments with other people involved do really stick with us. And there's one that's staying under a tree in summer when it's raining because it's relaxing. And that's the thing. They don't have to be life-changing, dramatic moments, but they just make us feel emotions and they stick with us. You guys are absolutely amazing at identifying this. So I don't know if anyone can remember the first thing of the three in those cogs that we were looking at. The first thing we were thinking about when we were thinking about using our voice was thinking about what? Can anyone remember that first word? Anyone remember? Oh, you connections. Absolutely. Well done for you guys shouting it. You guys have shown you've got connections with nature and you're starting to build the content of what you could say in your speech. One time everyone shut me outside. I will always remember the smiles. See, there we go. Nice memories. So you're showing your connections, but you've come up with content that you can use in your speech. So to structure your speech and use your voice for nature, you're going to use this structure. And Amy is going to demonstrate beautifully how you can use this structure. So to start, you're going to think of a word that's important within your speech, within your memory, within your story. And you're going to set the scene. You're going to give us a bit of an information about where this is taking place, what kind of day it is, what kind of season. And some of you have done that actually in the little memories you've shared. You've given us an idea of whether it's snowy, whether you're in a kind of warm summer landscape. Then you're going to tell us about this moment that stuck with you. And the last thing you're going to do is you're going to reflect on that. You're going to tell us why that was important to you. So you've given in the chat, you've given loads of information about these moments that are important to you. But this last bit about why is that important and what should we do listening to your story about that moment? What should we do with that information? Should we get out into nature more? Should we try planting trees? Should we go be brave and kind of go snowmobiling and doing something exciting? What's the action that we should take? So we're going to start by listening to the first part of Amy's speech. Now, Amy has written some, and I've stood with my kind of mouth open in awe of some of the amazing speeches that Amy has done. But with this one, she's really kindly broken it down to help us learn that structure. So the first bit you're going to hear is Amy sharing the start of her speech, where she's going to kind of emphasize a word that's important within her speech and set the scene about where it's taking place. So as you're listening to this first part, I want you to be listening for those two things. What's the word that she really emphasized at the beginning that seems important? And where is this taking place? What kind of place is it? Is Amy in a desert? Is she in a school grounds? Is she somewhere else? Okay. So if you guys listen up, we're going to listen to the first part of Amy's speech, and then you are going to tell me what word is at the beginning do we start off with? That's really important. And where is this taking place? I'll hand over to Amy now.
Okay, thanks, Katie. I hope you can all hear me okay. I think my Wi-Fi is a bit dodgy, but bear with me. Okay, so this is the start of my speech. Connection. We all have a unique and special connection with nature. And I would like to share a story with you that starts in Patagonia, in Chile, right around the other side of the world. 10 kilometers into our trek up the wooded valley, in the heat and droplets of sweat ran down my brow, while my legs let me know how far they had taken me through a constant ache. Thankfully, our Chilean guide, Antonio, suggested we take a rest and sit down by the rocky trail. Wild orchids festooned the grassy banks, and the knocking of a Magellanic woodpecker resonated through the crisp, clear air. Immediately, all thoughts of weariness were abandoned as my eyes took in the view. We had just hiked through 10 kilometers of absolute destruction,
A couple of years previously, an unfortunate camper had set fire to some lurol, and the fires tore through the native forest, eating everything in their path, as the myriad animals that called the trees home fled, refugees of a disaster fueled by climate change, as warmer temperatures and less rain made the wood even more vulnerable to a single spark of flame. Over 43,000 acres of forest were scorched.
Okay, so we have the opening of Amy's speech there. Can anyone tell me what word did Amy start with and then emphasize in that first sentence? Sometimes the first thing you start with is because you want people to really pay attention to it. And the second thing I'd like you to pop in the chat, where Amy's speech take place, or where did it start? So we had some setting the scene there, learning a little bit about where Amy was. Now you could give me lots of different types of answers, the country or the type of place. Well done to those at Kinfield St Mary's who got that connection, and we've got a few of you actually spotted connection. That first word, that first sentence also repeated that word. So we knew it was super important at the beginning. And we have got information there, Patagonia in Chile. Can anyone tell me what type of landscape Amy was in? Did anyone notice what type of landscape? Was she swimming in the sea? Was she playing golf on a golf course? Anyone here what type of landscape? In a forest? Wonderful, fantastic. So we've done those things that we're looking to do at the beginning. We've picked a word that we want to really emphasize at the beginning, that we want to stick in people's mind, and we've set the scene. We've got even more detail there. Amy's going up a rocky path through a forest. Fantastic. Did anyone know here anything that's happened in that forest that might be unusual, or that might have made this a slightly different landscape? Not your average forest. Yes, absolutely, a fire. Well spotted. Okay, so you're paying fantastic attention. Well done, guys. Even on a Friday afternoon after a super busy week, you're paying attention. So we've got the scene set. We've also got some pictures in there you might have seen that Amy shared from those moments. So the next thing that happens is the middle. So this is the moment that sticks with us. It's the moment that really generates those emotions in us. And as we listen, I want you to hear what part in particular of this exciting trip that Amy seems to be on, what really struck her as something important, what's really stuck with her, and was quite the powerful part that's really caught her attention. I'll hand back over to Amy.
From the height that we had reached, this scene spread out as far behind us as I could see, like a monochrome photograph, void of life. The burned trees had a ghostly silvery white sheen, like vague memories of a buried past. We hadn't seen a single bird or lizard or deer on our journey so far. Each of these dead trees had lived and thrived and breathed and grown towards the sky for over 200 years before this tragedy. Tears pricked my eyes as I contemplated the sheer scale of the destruction, as well as the vast loss of such ancient, wise beings. It would be many decades before the forest would ever reach its former glory and beauty again. But as I looked closer, I could start to see saplings sprouting out of the scorched earth, tentatively poking their young shoots into a new world full of possibilities. Hope rose up out of the ashes. The forest was renewing itself. As I slowly turned around to face in front of me up the trail, my breath caught in my throat as my senses absorbed the sheer beauty of the ecosystem ahead. The colours struck me first, such verdant fluffy white clouds took their time floating overhead, surveying the world beneath. Then the sound of birdsong filled my ears with joy. I felt the soft grasses beneath my fingers, and I smelt the swirling pheromones of a million trees, and the comforting fragrance of petrichor, which is the smell of soil after rain. As I walked through the trees, komorebi sent patterns of light flittering over the forest floor in a spectral dance. Behind me was such death and sadness, but ahead of me, life and hope. My emotions surged as I thought about how resilient these trees were, surviving eons long before and after us humans have walked through them.
Amazing, thank you. And I think there was a couple of slight pauses there in connection, but I think we managed to capture everything that Amy said. So there seemed to be almost a turning point, a moment that really caught Amy's attention there in that scene. You already shared, that Amy's walking up a track through a forest and that there's been a fire. Did anyone spot what really caught her attention and turned what could be a really upsetting scene into something more positive? What moment really struck Amy when she was walking through there? Have a think. You might want to discuss it with the person next to you, share it with your teacher. What was it that turned that moment of walking up through that landscape? What kind of thing do you think really struck Amy? And that seemed really powerful. Vibrant colours, fantastic. There we've got an answer in there from Shinfield. Well done, Shinfield and Mary. So we've got vibrant colours. What was creating those? What had, in amongst all of this fire scorched landscape, what did Amy see? What really struck her? And what kind of emotions do you think she felt? Some hands up. Absolutely. In amongst all of those dead trees that were scorched by that fire, just noticing those saplings growing. Amazing. I could look at those hands up everywhere. Someone got tired hands in Rosebrook because they keep putting their hand up for everything. Well done. Absolutely focused. We've had the moment shared, that really powerful moment that in amongst all of that destruction, something was growing, something powerful, beautiful, that was living on. So the final section that we suggest, so you've set the scene, you've shared that moment that really stuck with you. The last bit that we share is that reflection. Why did that matter? Why did it matter to see that? What emotions did it generate? And then what actions might you take or might other people take as a result of that? That last section, Amy's going to read from her speech.
I think that moment, there in the faraway forest of another continent, the roots of my activism laid themselves in the ground. We can learn so much from the wisdom of our tree friends. Renewal, resilience, and regeneration are so important through hard times. As I grew up and I learned about the threats that our world is facing, from deforestation to overfishing and climate change, I became so frightened and upset, just as I had felt looking behind me at the scorched trees. That gave me great motivation to try to speak. I set up an environmental education charity called Another Way. But that moment has also taught me to look ahead, to see the beauty that we are fighting for, which helps me to overcome my fear and despair and instills hope within me. Now, every time I feel overwhelmed by the climate and nature crisis, I go out for a walk in trees. Sitting amongst trees instantly makes me feel better as I absorb their peacefulness and resilience. For me, being a voice for nature means teaching the lessons of our trees to others who can't hear them for themselves. I have given talks to 10,000 people from around the world on how we can be kinder to our earth. With help from the Tree Council, I have planted 30,000 trees with the people in my community, giving our land a helping hand to renew. I am also helping young people like you to access the support that you need to speak up for nature and to create your own projects in school or at home. and I am an ambassador for the Tree Council. I think it is so important that we all use our own skills and talents and your superpower to be a voice for nature, just like each tree in a forest has its own unique role. For me, I really enjoy public speaking, so that's what I do. But maybe you like art or music or gardening or cooking, and all of these things can be used to create a message and to help our planet. Do you have a moment or a story in nature? Think about what you can learn from our beautiful planet and how you are going to put that in action to help be that thriving, healthy forest that I saw. What are you going to do to be a voice for nature?
Amazing. And that ending there, for me, as well as kind of thinking what makes a good speech, it gives me a lot of thoughts that I'm thinking about in terms of how I can continue my journey to be a force for nature. So thank you for that, Amy. That was astounding. What I want you to do now, as well as looking at some of the pictures of the amazing work that Amy's been doing with the charity, is just think about for that last section, that reflection. After sharing the moment, Amy reflected on why it mattered and what she did next. Can anyone share with your teacher, so you can go into the chat, why was that an important moment to Amy? What did it make her think and feel? And what did she do next to act upon that moment, to spread those kind of ideas and emotions and thoughts? What actions did she take? So 2 parts there. Why did it matter? Why was it important? What emotions did Amy feel? And what actions did she take next? Have a think, like I say, have a chat with others around you. And then let your teacher know that, so that it can be shared in the chat. Absolutely. But after seeing this, after seeing the destruction, but after seeing the strength of the trees that were growing back, wanted to do something about it, started a charity, wanted to be a role model for trees. I love that. And actually that's something Amy's talked about, that kind of friendship with trees and nature throughout. And I think that's a really, really positive way of looking at it. Instead of it just being kind of us and nature as two very separate things, we're not. We can have friendships with nature and we can be a role model for it. Really well put, Mrs. Turner's class. Well done, whoever that was who came up with that. So you've heard there Amy's entire speech in sections, how it started, that important moment, and how it ended with that reflection, but also that really positive note. And I noticed actually at the end, Amy was talking to us a lot. It wasn't just about herself, it was making us ask questions of ourselves, and what can we do? And that was really useful. I think that's possibly why my brain started thinking about how I'm a force for nature and what I can do. So that's a really nice thing to put in that reflection section. And you can see some of the fantastic work Amy's been doing. Just a recap, we start off with a word that's important, that links to our memory. For Amy's, it was that idea of connection. Set the scene, we share our moment, and then we end with why this is important to us, what emotions it generates, and what we want to do next, and what we think you can do next. So I just want you to have a think now before we move on to the next section, which is delivery. I just want you to have a quick think about that moment you thought of earlier. For someone, it was helping a hedgehog. For someone, it was sitting underneath a tree. It was seeing a squirrel outside. So thinking about how you would put that into this structure. Think about the scene that you're setting. Where did it take place? What was the weather like? What were you feeling? Exhausted and it was hot like Amy's was? Was it a cool day? Was it raining? Was it a bit grey and a bit dull? Then the moment that you're going to come up with, that you've started to think about, how did that make you feel? And then the end, how would you reflect on that? So if you helped some nature, if you helped, some of you talked about building homes for nature, how did that make you feel? What do you want to do next? And what do you think other people should do? So I just want you to have a think about that for your own moment. I'm just going to give you a minute to think about that. Set the scene. If you've got paper, you might want to note something down. What kind of day was it? What was the weather like? Who were you with? What moment are you sharing? And then afterwards, how did you feel? What could you do next? And what could other people do next based upon that memory? It might be about enjoying being in nature, but encouraging other people to enjoy being in nature. So I'm just going to give you a moment to think about that. You might want to share it with the person next to you. You might want to share it with the teacher. You don't need to do it in long sentences. You might just think your moment was helping wildlife. Your reflection is that you would like to do that more often, that you would like to help one particular species. It might be hedgehogs, it might be sparrows. That links one of our other ambassadors. And it might be that you want to encourage other people to help. If you've got any ideas, you can add them into, tell your teacher and see if I can pop them into the chat. What was your moment and what would you like to happen next? If you shared that with people and people heard that moment of yours, what would you like them to do next? How would you like them to take action now? What would you like to do next? I can see some of you making notes there. Anyone wants to be brave enough to share it in the chat? What was your moment and what is your reflection on that? What do you take from that? Why was it important? What would you do next after that moment? I can tell you that moment where I climbed the tree and it got a little bit scary. I actually found that it was the nature that calmed me down. It was actually being in the treetops and it was seeing a bird of prey. I didn't know what type of bird it was at the time. Just hovering near me that actually made me feel calm and tranquil, and it made me enjoy nature more. And so I would encourage other people to focus on the nature around them and to kind of, you know, accept that calmness it brings into their lives, into their mind, and enjoy being in nature. Because it brought that positive emotion for me that helped me climb down from that tree, otherwise I'd have been stuck. Rather than the panic and the nerves and the other thoughts that were going through my head at the time. Or have a think about yours. You might still be writing it down. If you do get an idea, and as we are moving on to the next section, if you want to share it with your teacher, I can see again another classroom with hands up all over the place, which is fantastic. Then please do feel free to stick it in the chat, even if we've moved on. I'm aware that time is passing, and so I'm just going to move on to the next section. So we've talked about the things you talk about. Amy there had talked about her own moment, that own personal memory, and linked it into kind of some information about her own activities, about things that we could do. We've talked about the structure of how we put it together, that start, middle, and end, the setting the scene, sharing the moment, the reflecting on it. Last thing that we need to think about, that was in those 3 cogs what we saw at the beginning, was about delivery, and that's about how we say it. It's not just about what we say, it's about how we say it. And for that, we're going to try and remember the 3 P's: pitch, pace, and personality. So pitch is how your voice is moving up and down as you speak. If you ever see like cartoons of things of a robot where they all have the same pitch and their voice doesn't change, it doesn't move up and down, it's all one pitch. It's a little bit dull. If you think about pace, I sometimes speak far too quickly and it makes it hard for people to hear what I'm saying. If I want people to listen to the words I'm saying, I need to think about how fast I speak. And the last thing, sharing personality. And that's something Amy said at the beginning. If you make it personal, it makes it more unique and more interesting. And so you want to think about including these things in how you speak, in conveying all of that information in the way that you speak so that people really listen to what you're saying. Now, Amy is going to reread a section of her speech, just a short bit, and we're going to listen and we're going to think, do we think Amy's voice has got a good pace? Is it going at a good speed? Can we hear what she's saying? Is it really slow? Is it too fast? Do we think she's speaking all in the same pitch, or is it changing as she says certain words to make them sound more interesting? And do we think she's getting her personality across? As we listen to Amy, we're going to find something that we can say is good about it, something that we thought, yes, that bit was really good, that pace was very good, or that she had all of her personality. And we're going to find something that Amy could improve on. So it might be that she was speaking too slowly. It might be that she was sounding a bit like a robot. Whatever it is, we're going to give one positive and one thing that Amy can improve on. Okay, so make sure you're listening carefully, because Amy's going to read a small part and we're going to listen to how she's delivered that.
Okay, here goes. From the height that we had reached, this scene spread out as far behind us as I could see, like a monochrome photograph void of life. The burn trees had a ghostly silvery white sheen, like vague memories of a buried past. We hadn't seen a single bird or lizard or deer on our journey so far. Okay. What did I do well, and what could I have done better?
But tell your teacher, pop it in the chat. What do we think? What do you think was positive and useful and helpful at making us listen to Amy's speech there, and what could improve it? I love the amount of hands going up. This isn't just one or two people in each class. We've got almost entire classes with their hands up. So pass that info on. What do you think Amy did well there? What do you think was positive, and what do you think could be done to improve it? Do you think that she changed the pitch of her speaking? Do you think that made it interesting? Do you think that it was at a good pace? Do you think that there could be anything changed about the way she delivered that? I know you've got ideas, guys, because I saw those hands go up. Oh, we've got some nice, exciting vocabulary. I love these things that you've thought about. You've even thought about more than we've even discussed today. Exciting vocabulary and expression. Good projection of her voice. Now, this tells me that you guys have already been doing a little bit of work, I think, on how you deliver your speeches and how you use your voice. Fantastic. Anyone got any feedback? All positive so far, Amy? So thumbs up from the guys there. The guys in class. What about if Amy was doing that as a full speech? So you've heard it all in sections. Do you think if that was a full speech, if there were anything there that would make it harder for the listener? I mean, she is a bit of an expert, to be fair, so I can completely understand that you will find lots of positives to say about Amy's speech and delivery. I can tell you one thing that I would think about, and this is something that I do. We have mentioned it. I do speak too fast, and as I'm saying it now, I'm thinking that I need to slow down. I'm trying to speak a little bit more slowly. Yeah, I think so as well, and perhaps slow down a little bit. Because I think if I was Amy in that and I'd continued, I think I would have struggled to continue to breathe in time. And I think I do that sometimes when I start a speech or I'm speaking in front of assemblies and lots of people. I just want to get my words out as quickly as possible. Forget that I need to still take breaths at points and not run out of sound like I've been running a race, and actually I've just been stood speaking. What did you think, Amy? Do you agree with what they've said?
Yeah, well, I think you've been very nice to me there. I was speaking very quickly in that bit, so I would usually speak a lot more slower so that people can have time to digest every word that you're saying, and instead of just being overwhelmed by all the words coming out really quickly. So yeah, top tip when you're delivering your speeches is to take your time to make sure that you breathe at the end of every sentence so that you can clarify your message to the listener as best as possible.
Is that something you had to work on, Amy? Is that something that you do naturally, or is that something that you had to practice when you started speaking in front of people?
I definitely had to practice, because sometimes, especially when you feel a bit nervous, if you've got a really big audience, you sometimes want to rush through something. So working with your breathing actually really helped me when I said taking a breath at the end of every sentence before you start again. That's something you could maybe practice before delivering your own speeches.
Fab. I think that's advice that I could definitely take as well. So that's 3 things ticked off there. We've talked about the content, what we're going to talk about. We've talked about the structure, what order are we going to put that information in to really make it stick in the minds of our listeners, and delivery. How do we get that information across so that people can really take it in and it can really hit home rather than them missing out on bits of key information? So you've heard that example from Amy, a little bit about pace, and some really useful tips there as well about stopping for breaths, having a pause at the end of each sentence, just to make sure that we're not rushing through things and to make sure that people have got time to take that information in before you move on to the next point that you're making. So recapping that, start, set the scene, share that moment of how you felt, end, why is it important, and what are you doing now and what can other people do? If we're trying to help people deepen their connection to nature, we might need to give them some pointers of things that they could do next, and reasons why this is so important to us. And think about those 3 Ps: pitch, pace, and personality. It's quite hard to say, pitch, pace, and personality. Okay. I'm just going to see who's still awake on this Friday afternoon. It's actually quite warm here for me. I'm not too far from Rosebrook School, actually. It's quite warm, so some of you might be starting to get a bit drowsy. I've got some questions on the screen and I'm going to do a quiz. Let's see who's the fastest finger first. This might be testing your teacher's typing skills faster than it is actually you guys answering. Number 1, what is an ambassador's secret power? And remember, you guys can be school ambassadors too, so this might be your secret power as well. So type it in the chat. What is an ambassador's secret power? 1 school in there, yes. Fabulous. Oh, yeah, Mrs. Turner typed 3 words, so that took a little bit longer, which is still in there. Connection, and specifically connecting to nature. Fantastic. What is a moment? What is a moment? How can we tell that something's a moment? What's the test? Something we remember and have emotions, absolutely. So if it happened a year ago and I still remember it, there's a reason why I must still remember it. Sticks with you your whole life, absolutely. And something that creates emotions in us that we feel invested in, absolutely. In fact, you've pretty much got the words on the screen. The structure of a Voices of Nature story. We talked about it being in 3 parts. What was in the start, what was the middle, and how do we end? I love that. Hands right up. Mrs. Turner's class, whoever's in the football shirt at the front, hands up all the time. Love it. So we need to have delivery content, absolutely. I've just realised I've got all the answers on the screen now, if anyone saw those. Oops. So yes, we need to think about the content delivery and structure, absolutely, but how we structure it with our start, our setting the scene, the moment, and then that end where we reflect. What did the 3 Ps stand for when Amy was delivering her speech? Wow, that was really, really fast. Pace, personality, and pitch. It's hard to say. See how fast you can say that in a row. Pitch, pace, personality, absolutely. And what it takes for you guys to share your story. You need to share that passion. And that's the last thing that we want to leave you on. We've got 2 minutes and we will finish on time. But it's for you to share your passion. And so we want to set you a mission for you to take away and for you to do. As a result of this live lesson, we would love you to create a speech, share your voice. And so this speech will follow that kind of structure. You might have already pretty much planned it out in this session, thought about what your moment would be, thought about the scene, where it took place, when it took place, setting that scene at the beginning, and thinking about that reflection. How did it make you feel? What did it make you want to do? And what messages does it give to other people? So we'd love you to write something down. It doesn't need to be a really long speech. It might be a minute or so long, but just sharing your connection with nature with other people, because that makes your connection with nature so much more powerful when you share it with others, because it inspires them without you necessarily even realizing. So think about what you've shared today with people sat around you in your classroom, that you've shared with your teacher, and we'd love you to put those together to create a speech. And you can share them with us via your teacher. They can email us to the schools@treecouncil email address.org.uk, and you could share them via our competition. We would love some of you to record you saying these. And that's one of the reasons why how you say it is really important, thinking about the speed that you're speaking, making it sound interesting, and showing through the way you speak the passion that you have. We'd love you to enter our Speaking Up for Trees and Nature competition. So if you're interested in that, speak to your teacher, tell them that you would like to enter it, and you can record a video and send it in to us. That has to be done by the end of May. So you guys will probably be having a week's holiday soon, if you're in England and Wales. And you will be able to get that in just before you go on that holiday. There is a link there, but I will also just share an email with all of the teachers that signed up for this session, just so you know how to do that. And if you enjoyed this session, we would love it if you spoke to your teacher, if you're a Young Tree Champion school, about being a school ambassador, because this is a sample of a live masterclass, this one led by Amy, and we will be having more taking place in June that will cover topics like art, spoken word. We're also doing a different one that we've never done before, which is about taking action to support nature. And it sounds like some of you already have, to help animals and wildlife. We'll kind of be helping you to start your own conservation project where you do something, take action to help wildlife. So if you're interested in that and you're a Young Tree Champion school, do speak to your teacher and let them know that you're interested in becoming a school ambassador. I'm aware that it's an hour now, that it's 2:30, and that you guys will be having all sorts of exciting things to get back to. So I just want to say a huge thank you to Amy for sharing her speech, her expertise, and her experience as an ambassador and as somebody who does an awful lot of public speaking to really communicate that passion and that connection to nature. So a big thank you to Amy. Thanks, guys. And look at all that. Amazing. Lovely to hear you saying, shouting your thanks. And thank you to all of you guys in schools all across the UK for joining us for this live lesson. We've been delighted.